Come on over here. Come on over here. No, you flipped me off. Come on, coward. No, no, no. Come on. You're not an intellectual. You're a fake and a fraud.
Man, I change my background like some people change their underwear. That is to say, once every year or so. Anyway, this particular project has actually been simmering for a good while. It's actually been mostly completed since December 2021, so excuse some no stuff from around that time. And some slightly crackly bits and new stuff. Basically, my microphone was breaking down, but I had to match the old stuff, so, you know, that kind of thing. But anyway, I kept on having issues with the window dressing around this review. That's because this video is a controversial opinion, and not exactly the fun kind. So people are gonna make assumptions about you. Assumptions that lead to them just disregarding you as a hater, even if you actually do have some sort of argument. My attempts to fight this have actually left the video in a bit of a production hell. So I'm just gonna summarize the window dressing just to get us out of purgatory here. Sonic 1 is a decent but rough start. Sonic CD is entirely what you put into it, which for me is not much. Sonic 2 is a fun, if a bit basic entry. And Sonic 3 was ruined for me by the subject of this video and gardening it too much. More on that throughout the review. Oh yeah, and Classic Sonic overall is just okay. Some fun stuff in there, definitely worth checking out what interests you, but you could only play the main 4 games and get by just fine. Modern Sonic just has more objective meat on its bones, and that's where my primary focus lies. In fact, when I decided I wanted to do Sonic videos, I wasn't even going to bother covering Classic Sonic initially, because there's not much to really say about Classic Sonic that isn't just your experience with it. The Japanese canon and other mangas, the old cartoons, Archie, Fleetway, even later peeks out like the Sonic Mega Collection during the modern era. It's all dependent on how you grew up with it, on the sort of awe and wonder that gets almost fetishized within the fandom because the details weren't as well defined as they are with modern. I didn't have those experiences. I got into this series in late 2018, when the classic and modern split was well defined, and I had the internet. So excuse me if I don't have much to say about that as a relative newcomer who just took these games as they came to me. I can appreciate classic plenty, but it's not exactly peak Sonic in my eye. Here's my tier list for the 5 people that care. But with that context in mind, what exactly changed my mind about never doing Classic Sonic? Well, that all changed in December of 2020, when I put down $5 for a game that, well, let's just say it quickly became my least favorite Sonic game of all time. A game that, despite that initial impression, had been heralded as the best in 2 decades, if not the entire franchise. And I was just kind of wondering, like, what these people were smoking, because honestly, Sonic Mania sucks. Do you see why I wanted to give more context originally? If I had just opened like that, what would you have assumed? Oh, you must not be very good at Sonic games. Oh, you must not be very good at classic Sonic games. Oh, you must not have finished it. All of which are not true. Sonic games are among the few games I can actually somewhat excel at. I may not be the best at Sonic games, but I have beaten the main 4 to some degree without cheats. And yes, I did complete this game 3 separate times. I am a man with Sonic and the Secret Rings as his number 2 favorite Sonic game. I am built out of patience and understanding that the problem might be me. So excuse me if I want to make one lousy video about a product that I purchased and found not to be to my satisfaction. Because quite frankly, I am tired of feeling like I am not allowed to despise it. Okay, that's enough anger for now. Let's try to bring some positivity into the room. Sonic Mania actually does have some things that I like, so I'm gonna list those first. Starting with something very interesting in the grander scheme of Sonic lore. Ladies, gentlemen, snails, I present to you the Sonic Neo-Classic Timeline. Picture, if you will, you're a Sonic fan. in 2017, doing your first playthrough of your new favorite video game, Sonic Forces. Naturally, you're using the English dub because you're a frickin' normie, and you encounter this scene.
Oh, you're that Sonic from another dimension, aren't you?
What the? Did they just do that? Did they just say that all of classic Sonic from 1991 to 1997 is in another dimension? But what about all the classic continuity references in past games? What about Sonic Generations, where he was from the past? Did Tails forget about Sonic Generations? How could they do this? How could they make such a heinous retcon? Well, the simple answer is, they didn't. There is no retcon here. This is just a new piece of continuity being revealed to us. Look at the scene again. Not once does Tails say that classic Sonic was always from another dimension. Just that he's from another dimension now. The idea that he was always in another dimension now is just something fans made up in their heads. What the game is actually referring to is a timeline split caused by the events of Generations. This is not classic Sonic, who appeared in games from 1991 to 1997. This is Neo-Classic Sonic, a version of that Sonic who was dragged from the past into Generations and came out with knowledge he would not have otherwise, thus creating another timeline with the same past as the main one up to a certain point. Or did you not notice I'm using the homing attack without any special shields in this game? This is such an easy thing to figure out, but I still see so many people just not understand what it really means. It's this weird binary thinking that everything labeled classic just has to be Sonic's past or it breaks the canon. Like, guys, it's okay if you like stuff that isn't strictly the main canon. I like Mania-Uncle Heroes DS, but you don't see me coping hard in order to make it canon. Oh, what's that? Time travel doesn't work like that in the Sonic series? Thus means such a timeline is impossible? Why yes, it doesn't normally work like that. In fact, Sonic CD and series Punching Bag Sonic 06 follow the logic of going back in time and altering the past, leading to the complete erasure of previous timelines. But guess what came back in Generations? Oh, that's right, an erased timeline. 2 of them came back, in fact. So, maybe, just maybe, we can make an exception this time on the account of time doing a belly flop. Oh, but hey, maybe it doesn't even matter. For you see, there are rumblings that this piece of continuity is being retconned. That somehow, someway, Mania happened in the past of the modern timeline. Okay, supposing we could ignore all of this, may I ask just a simple question? What about the Phantom Ruby? In the original Forces prequel comics, Eggman doesn't know what it is when it lands on his doorstep. And throughout the actual game, it takes them 6 freaking months to even get a clue what it even is. So, even if we want to say that Generations pulled some Doctor Who crap and he just kind of forgot the first time around, how is Sonic forgetting about the ultra-powerful gem with a very distinctive sound and effect on people that tossed him from island to island then straight across to the future one time? How does Tails not have some kind of log about it? Why does Knuckles not realize what it is and warn the others? He was leading the Resistance, they just never encounter Infinite? Again, they had 6 months to recognize it, but they didn't, because they never encountered it. Because when Forces was written, the logic was that Mania took place in a split, alternate timeline that also patched a lot of holes from Generations. There would be no way for them to remember something that didn't happen to them. So, if this retcon is indeed happening, you guys not only reopen a ton of old plot holes, but create a bunch of new ones to keep them company. Good job! But to be honest, even without the plot holes, I still would prefer the Neo-Classic Timeline remain a thing, simply from a creative perspective. Sure, there's always room for hacky retcon projects that take place in the past, but those will always be railroaded by what comes later. Part of the appeal of franchises like Sonic is that you don't really need to look too deeply to find the connective tissue between most games. Even something like Shadow the Hedgehog, where blatant retcons and bad writing dominate the story, connects well enough to everything that you don't mind it being part of the canon. Forces was also somewhat redeemed by the IDW comics and their use of continuity early on. But of course, a consequence of that type of continuity is that if you contradict all that stuff too much, you're straight up non-canon right out of the starting gate. I mean, have you ever tried to tell a Star Wars story between episodes 3 and 4? Certain characters and meetings just can't happen, and you have to really stretch things if you want to toe the line. And I actually like Kenobi for the most part. My point is that the Neo-Classic Timeline allows for classic Sonic stories that don't need to worry about these types of things, just as they didn't back in the actual classic era. You can have all of your dumb classic OCs in this continuity all you want. The possibilities are endless to do your own alternate take on what the franchise could have been if taken another direction. You could retell a story we already know, or just make your own. In a rare instance for this franchise, everybody gets what they want. Or they could just retcon and ruin everything. Your call, Sega! But we should probably stop lollygagging on that and just move on from here. So, second thing I like. We have individual save files. For some reason, ever since the HD games started up, individual save files have been a thing of the past. Only really appearing in stuff like the Wii games. Heck, when they ported Colors to HD, they got rid of it for some reason. Maybe it's because I grew up in a multi-sibling household, or just because I like keeping my original experience with the game intact when replaying it, but I just think multiple save files are a must. Multiple profiles like some consoles do is not a solution for this, especially on Steam. And finally, the music is fine. I admittedly forgot a lot of it, but that's mostly down to it being mainly remixes of old tracks, which was forgettable last time Sega did it too. There's a good bop here and there in terms of the original tracks, but that's all I can really say about it. I'll take forgettable over actually painful any day of the week. And that's it. Save for praises I'll give to individual levels, that's all I really like about it. And look, I didn't come to this game expecting like an amazing experience or anything. I figured this game would just be okay to me. No real solid opinions on it like the actual classic games. This game proved that it sucks to me on its own terms. I didn't come to it trying to hate, nor am I trying to undo the fun you had with it with this review. If you like this game, Uncle Benis respects your opinion. He just asks, yet again, that he be allowed to dislike it. And with that lengthy preamble out of the way, we can finally start talking about my general complaints with the game itself. Starting with... I don't like it. You know how Sonic Colors Ultimate had the original all bloomed out and stuff in an attempt to look more HD? That's basically what this game looks like for the Genesis games. Freaking plasticky and bloomed out. And normally I don't mind a plasticky Sonic aesthetic. But this... it's like every character is made out of balloons and traveling through a world of marble slabs. Knuckles has it the worst though. His head got fatter, he's a bit less tall and lean, and he's basically turned entirely pink. Improvement? I know that they had to update his character artwork to match his modern counterpart a bit more, but did they really have to do that to his in-game sprites? And yes, before you protest, I do know that this is a reference to Knuckles Chaotix. It just sucks there too. To be fair, the aesthetic works fine sometimes, but most of the time there's something off. And then they throw in stuff like these creepy hands that just look nasty. Ugh, I just don't like it. It's a weird day when my video compression is actually an improvement. Also, the animation is sometimes smoother than I think it should be, given that art style, but the remakes did this too, so it's whatever. You know, people oftentimes say that this game perfectly replicates the Genesis physics. Not really? Now, in terms of general feeling, all the Genesis games do have very slightly different physics. There's a lot of overlap between, say, Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, but the feeling is distinct in subtle ways. The Sonic CD remake by the same people managed to get the feel just right. But I guess the looser physics of the 1 and 2 remakes threw them off because these just feel awful. My jumps feel more sluggish than they should be, there's this weird, almost mush to my forward momentum. It just doesn't feel right. And I figured I'd get used to this during my first playthrough, like I did with Sonic Advance. But I never really did, even to my second playthrough. Also, I legit forgot about the drop dash for a solid chunk of this game, so people need to stop pretending Scott skipped a man. And now, for our final point. How would I describe the level design in Sonic Mania? Well, let's take the most pedantic parts of Sonic CD and mix them with the most annoying elements of 3 and K. There will be times where you know what to do, but you're having a bit of a hard time getting the game to listen to you. Brief instances, I'll grant you, but they're pretty common. In CD, it made sense because the game wants you to slow down and look around, not just speed through like a maniac. Mania is a more common Sonic game though, so these areas are just meant to annoy you. It also carries over that element from 3 and K of 2 boss battles per zone, which was annoying there and is extra annoying here. I used the super form cheat on them mainly out of annoyance. They're just bad. And they're the perfect showcase of Mania's worst quality. That quality being that this game thinks it is way smarter than it actually is. Let me explain. Hey, you wanna know my favorite part of Sonic Generations? That part where we're supposed to be playing Seaside Hill, but we get there and it's more like any other water level in Sonic history? That's the vibe with most of the returning level gimmicks in Mania. Some of them do work, or even improved upon, like the bouncy parts of Wacky Workbench being placed in Chemical Plant, or Press Garden Act 2 being given the ice cubes from Ice Cap. These gimmicks do actually blend in with the zones they've been brought over to, so they're fine. But other times they'll stick in a gimmick that just really does not fit the zone they put in, and it's super distracting. I think the worst and most obvious one is when they put the Sandopolis light switch gimmick into Oil Ocean. It's not just that the gimmick doesn't translate well, since Sandopolis is about being in a spooky temple with ghosts and stuff, and Oil Ocean is what it says on the tin, thus they have to replace darkness and ghosts with smoke. But it's the fact that this gimmick has been retranslated before way better. Sonic Lost World had it in Silent Forest Act 4, and it made sense in context since Zor, aka Emo Zeddy, aka Best Zeddy, is into darkness and stuff. The challenge also comes from the fact that darkness disables your homing attack, which basically means you're vulnerable until you get the lights back on. His boss also utilized the gimmick well, since you couldn't tell which one was the real Zor until you hit the lights, which gives him an opportunity to take out a bit of the floor or hit you. It worked thematically, it worked mechanically, and most of all, it clearly wasn't done just for the sake of doing it, while this clearly was. The creators of Mania, in essence, put themselves into the product way too much, which ended up hurting it, which is probably why pretty much every review of Mania mentions them, while most reviews of other Sonic games barely mention the creators at all, because they can't stop rubbing the fact that they are the ones who made it in your face. Though the creators being who they are does raise the question of how Sega themselves might have limited this game in some small ways. For example, in my playthroughs, you will notice me turn the Super State on and off at times, a handy feature that has been in fan hacks for years. My copy of Sonic 3 Complete, a fan hack that can run on original hardware, has 2013 on its title screen, and that has super canceling in it, just as an example. Sonic Adventure's entire super transformation is due to modding, but it also has this feature. Mania, however, only has this feature through the mod loader, and from what I've heard, people had to complain to even get the transformation on a separate button in a patch. Another feature fan hacks have featured for years. In addition, the Christian Whitehead remakes of 1, 2, and CD all save their progress by act, not by zone, like the original 3 and K did. A good feature for beginners that is, for some reason, entirely absent in Mania. Admittedly, I only noticed it thanks to a crash, but it remembered a special ring I got in my first playthrough of that zone. If details like that can be saved, why not just save by act? These are areas where it feels like Sega told them to be more accurate to the Genesis originals, instead of making logical improvements. So while I do think most of the blame for the problems I've listed, and will list, do fall on the creators, if Sega is to blame for any of the weirdness going forward, then that criticism is directed towards them. I'm not that unreasonable. Alright everyone, time for the main event. And we're on the floor now because shut up, this video's taking too long to make. I like the tie, I'm kind of trying it out. We're going to examine the story level by level and really walk you through my experience with it. If you've been holding in your poo, then it's time to unclench, because we're going sewer swimming. Our story starts with the opening of 3 and K. Not literally the opening of 3 and K, obviously, just an homage to it. as Sonic arrives on Angel Island. Then we see some egg robos dig up something called the Phantom Ruby, while Sonic and Tails just stand there. Not even trying to hide, just watching. As Eggman's robots are digging something up on freaking Angel Island, which, in case you haven't noticed, is in the ocean again, judging by the background. Not that it's bothering Knuckles, so maybe the devs just didn't notice what they did until they had to explain it on Twitter 3 years later. Then they all get warped away to Green Hill as the egg robos get transformed into the hard-boiled heavies. We are literally on the first cutscene, people. Let's be clear here. Mania's story doesn't need to be freaking Shakespeare, but it does need to be competent within its own formatting, which it is not. Too much vital information is not conveyed properly in this opening, and it continues to not be conveyed for the rest of the game. To catch up anybody not in the know, the classic games made use of environmental storytelling combined with manual lore to carry its narrative. These manuals, for better and for worse, are currently being ignored due to the Sonic Origins cutscenes, but when Mania came out they were still relevant. Now obviously, being a compilation title, Sonic Mania is unable to use environmental storytelling, so it's already down a peg. But what does the manual give us? Wow, that is just nothing. The top section is the only thing that's not in the game itself, and it has a slight contradiction, since they weren't the no personality having heavies until the Phantom Ruby transformed them. The only useful bit of lore here is that the Phantom Ruby came from a dimensional breach. Don't let the Phantom Ruby get into the wrong hands! Eggman literally gets in a cutscene! Why do you have these expectations, Dad? Look man, I'm no industry professional, but would it have really hurt you guys to go the 3D Blast route and have some pictures over text? It might have helped is all I'm saying. Anyway, guess we'll talk about the individual levels while we're here. Green Hill is perfectly alright. Like it always is. Bosses are okay, but still break the pace. After the Act 2 boss, Eggman orders the newly minted hard-boiled heavies away, as we warp the chemical plant, which is longer than the original, but not actually better. The first boss doesn't hurt that much, but as mentioned before, the second one does, before we take a tube over to Studiopolis, aka the only good part of this game. It's the only zone where the wackier elements and shiny visuals actually come together for me, because it's a place for making television movies, so reality is supposed to be a bit more exaggerated. It's the razzle-dazzle of Hollywood in a Sonic zone. What can I say beyond... this would be way better with rush mechanics. We then go over to Flying Battery, which is mostly fine, but is where the game starts falling apart, even if I try to call it decent. For the good, it's just a mostly solid level, expanding on the concepts of the original, and bringing in some elements from Wing Fortress, which actually transition more nicely than you'd think. Well, except for these fans, which Mania has decided need to move instead of staying in place, which means you need to stay on top of them while waiting for them to move, and then stay on top of them as they move. Perfectly doable, but also extremely dumb and poorly thought out. And of course the bosses in this zone absolutely suck. We then take a hang glider down to Press Garden, our second original zone. And if you'll excuse me, I'm just gonna take a little nap here. Yeah, the first half of the zone is just incredibly boring. We already got news and stuff handled over in Studiopolis. We don't really need newspaper aesthetics mixed with a half-baked ancient temple. Wait, are those A's not moving? Does that mean it's like a stuck key? Yes! It's gonna be my greatest fanfiction yet! The second half of the zone cleans up well enough though. It entirely ditches the newspaper gimmick in exchange for snow and these pink leaves. It's actually kinda cool, and the type of thing you'd only get in a classic Sonic game. Why wasn't the first act like this? Just call it Ice Garden or something. We don't care about the newspapers! Oh yeah, and the bosses are mid-tier. More annoying than anything else. This is when Eggman warps us over to Metallic Madness. A level only here so we can fight Metal Sonic again. I mean, I guess that was the highlight of CD in general, so You kinda have to do it, but I do think it says something when you could otherwise cut Little Planet out of this plot entirely, and it would make no difference. I think they overdo the Metal Sonic boss a bit though. You've got the race, and the bit I mentioned earlier, and a race again, then he grows giant-sized. I think it would have been better if Metal Sonic was brought back in another CD level at this point in the game, play with low-tier antagonists for a few levels alongside the Deadly Six, I mean the Hard Bullet Heavies, then had his old level come back with a big old boss battle at the end. Just build it up and sweeten the deal a bit, you know? We then get Warp 2. Well, I'm out of here. Yep, the rare instance of a fun water level has been turned into a bad water level in Mania. Like, yeah, it'll kick your teeth in on your first playthrough of 3K, but you tend to see the brilliance of it by your second playthrough. Water is a theme in that level, but it's not used in any gimmicky ways. You don't feel hampered by it at all. In Mania, however, all it seems to do is hamper you. Especially with the bubble gimmick in Act 1. Sure, I did have to get good at, and I actually kind of like watching the game whip me into learning it now, but that doesn't really make it a good gimmick. It was bad in Triple Trouble, and it's bad here. I think it's an example of wackiness gone bad in Sonic games, because this is way too Mario. That is to say that Mario does wacky because it's wacky, while Sonic does wacky because it's cool. It's an odd balance to try and tackle, but it can be done. Anyway, this whole level is long, boring, and totally unbefitting of its namesake, and the bosses are both garbage. Heck, why is Eggman even doing this kind of grunt work? Not that he's immune to doing stuff himself, that just feels kinda beneath him, you know? Anyway, after a quick transition, oh hey, Knuckles is here. Yeah, let's address another story problem here. Despite there being two stories going on at the same time here, little effort was made to make it feel like two stories are going on at the same time. Let me explain a little further. Let's consider for a moment Sonic Rush. The two stories are separate, despite going through the exact same levels, but they cross over at points, with new details added in the dialogue and stuff depending on which story you play. The continuity between the two is a bit liquid, but you can easily gloss over that in service of the gameplay. All Mania had to do to replicate that is to use the already made sprites to put the other characters into the act transitions. Like, you walk over to get warped to Little Planet and Knuckles is standing there. It'd be a little thing, but it'd go a long way. The only reason I'm guessing they didn't do that is because 3K didn't. But their Knuckles story took place after the main one, so it actually made sense. Anyway, Knuckles gets knocked off the plane by the apparently female heavy magician, and we get almost an entire level on the tornado, even though I'm pretty sure most people don't like that part in Sonic 2. Say, is Knuckles doing anything interesting? Okay, put me back in the dang plane.
Runaway train. The orphans.
You know, I actually forgot most of this game's content in the months between playthroughs, so I legit thought we had an entire train-based level broken up by plane segments and like, not the other way around. How our brains cope. So yeah, after that weird instance and an awful boss battle, our plane crashes, and we go into the just okay Act 2. It's just okay, with the only notable addition being the illusionary appearances of Bark, Bean, and Fang. 3 characters who each appeared for like 5 minutes in the classic games, and then were relegated to Archie Comics Hell for a while. I really don't care about them that much, but apparently some people do. Hey, are those posters traced? At least their fight isn't that painful. We're then shot to one of the worst zones in Sonic 2, Oil Ocean, and it is just as painfully slow as it was before. Like, it isn't even improved or worsened in any significant way, except that one. Almost all the differences are just different, end of story. The bosses aren't even that much worse than any other boss in the game. Like, come on, you couldn't even have the decency to be uniquely bad? And while this is one of the only times where the elemental shields come in handy, to the point where I question why they even bothered putting them in the game, like, seriously, there's a reason only one of these things stuck around after 3K, before it too was mostly phased out. I do have to wonder, though, how pissing off the US government like this jives with the environmental themes a lot of people bring up, you know, when it comes to the classic games. I don't think burning oil is exactly the best thing for the ecosystem is all. Anyway, we then fly a submarine over to Angel Island. I'm not having a stroke, that just kinda happens. And we end up in Lava Reef Zone. Dang, I didn't even like you the first time. Why'd you bother coming back? I think this is the first time Mania has prioritized story over gameplay. Because yeah, this is entirely here because of the story. But that sudden story focus is actually breaking things. You see, 4 zones ago, the Phantom Ruby just kinda disappeared from the game altogether. If you really paid attention, you'd notice that Eggman had a special device during that encounter. Presumably to power his latest giant robot. Dude has a history of doing that, you see. This means that our heroes have been manually going from zone to zone. So, we've gone from Angel Island, to wherever the heck Mirage Saloon is, to West Side Island, only end up back on Angel Island. All this, just so Knuckles can have another exclusive boss fight? You know, John Takua's weird route to King Nui is actually making a lot more sense right now. So anyway, after an annoying level with annoying boss fights all around, Knuckles, the Guardian of the Master Emerald, after having just defended it from being stolen again, and having the would-be thief get away, decides to go screw around on the little planet because...
There's a simple explanation for that.
Anyway, we get to Metallic Madness. For real this time. Which is a perspective nightmare where you go into the background of the platform in a few areas. With the foreground there to get in your way. And these freaking blinds that were in the original, but didn't move as fast, even in the remake. It's only a slight speed boost, but it's just enough to make it an eyesore. Especially since more parts of the level use them. Legitimately, the only thing they didn't mess up in some way while trying to outdo the original is the shrinking parts. These are nicely expanded upon from CD, though the boss resulting from it is another one where you can accidentally win it. Because I didn't realize until my Knuckles playthrough that you have to flick a switch on the front. If you check over the footage, you can see that I mainly got either because I jumped everywhere during bosses like a total jerk, or because Tails got it. And now, for our grand finale. Hell. Ugh, this zone. Say what you will about all the previous ones, and I have said plenty what with the script rapidly approaching 8,000 words, but at least they didn't cause me physical pain. Not just in playing, but in watching it be played. Every returning gimmick is hell, and every new gimmick is hell. I get it. Final zone, it has to be hard. But does it have to be so dang irritating? The aesthetics kinda remind me of Final Fortress from Sonic Heroes, except that one can actually be kinda fun. Save for that eye laser at the end, that's still kinda cheap. There was legitimately a point in this level where I hit a dying loop because of these bullet things you platform up. I kept on getting crushed, despite not seeming like I should be in range to be crushed. So I still can't tell if I was sucking or if the game was. Ran into it during my Knuckles playthrough too, but it wasn't as bad. I do have to wonder about these stained glass windows though. We're inside of a robot assembly structure, right? Who put those in here? Did Eggman do it? Did the hard-boiled heavies do it? Why would they do it? They haven't gotten any development in that direction. Or in any direction, come to think of it. Seriously, am I the only who forgot they were even in the game at this point? I am curious about the placement of the Chaos Emeralds in them though. 3 on each side, with the White Emerald in the middle. I wonder if this is perhaps a reference to the White World Ring from Sonic and the Secret Rings, which were both very different and very similar to the Chaos Emeralds, though obviously focused on emotional energy above all else. There were 3 rings of positive emotions, 3 rings of negative emotions, and then the White Ring, which was of wishes, which naturally makes it fairly neutral. As Sonic explained,
大きな力は人を幸せにもするが不幸にもする。例えばこのリングには人の願望が詰まっている感じだ。それは希望とも言えるが、話によっては野望や欲望にもなっちまう。
Given how the Phantom Ruby, by all indications, is a sort of emo Chaos Emerald with a focus towards illusions mainly harnessed out of fear, by Force's lore at least, the reference could be intentional. Or perhaps I'm just trying to justify my theory that every well-received 2010 Sonic game stole from Secret Rings in some way, since they could only hope to capture at least some of its greatness, but it'll have a video in its time for all that. Anyway, why does everyone look so surprised when they fall in this car? They have a sprite for riding it normally and they're clearly doing it intentionally, so what's the deal with that? And why is Eggman in a baby jumper during the final standard boss? Is that why he has those disgusting hands? Anyway, we gotta wrap up. If you get all 7 Chaos Emeralds while playing as Sonic, you unlock a secret final boss. It looks perfectly okay as a final boss, even has a pretty nice music track, but I feel like you really could have clinched the stakes a bit by setting it in space. Maybe above Little Planet. Just feels a bit disconnected from everything is all. Plus, I've seen better final battles in Interdimensional Void. After that, the Phantom Ruby gets hit by Sonic or something, knocks the Chaos Emeralds out of him, and that's how we slap classic Sonic into forces. Now, don't misconstrue me here. I do see the appeal of a classic Sonic game in the modern day. While a lot of people do like to point out the Dimps games when talking about old complaints about 2D Sonic, they often forget that after Advance, they started modeling the games more and more off the 3D entries, mainly in terms of increasing aerial control. It is an evolution of what we got from the Genesis games, but it drifts further and further away with the natural passage of time. While I personally don't need it, going back to Classic for a game or two isn't that bad of an idea now that I actually sit down and think about it. A good breather from the current modern formula. However, where Mania fails in that concept is that it's an entirely uncritical look at classic Sonic, mimicking what it did without any consideration for what could actually be done to improve it. Well, beyond a jarring frame rate bump in places and overwriting sprites, but that's neither here nor there. Much like a lot of the media outlets that praised it, its standards for good Sonic are basically just whatever came out before 1998. Wow. 7 years of games to consider among the 25 this game was made to celebrate. That doesn't smell fishy at all. In my opinion, the best anniversaries are celebrated by embracing continuity, good and bad. Sure, throwbacks are bound to happen when you go on for like ever, but as long as the focus is on making a celebration for all fans, then you're good. Sonic Mania feels like it was made almost exclusively for people who fell out of Sonic after the Genesis days, in isolation from 18 years of the franchise. Sure, I don't expect Sonic to start homing attacking things, even if this version is capable of that, but there are elements from across the franchise that don't feel like they were considered for how to make this game even better. As if they don't matter when obviously they do. This is the biggest problem with Sonic Mania. The biggest thing it represents for this franchise is a massive middle finger. And that's my piece. And I'll repeat my sentiment from earlier. Just because I don't like this game doesn't mean you can't like this game. I just have my reasons for not liking it, and I ask that they be respected. If a Mania sequel happens, and for the fans I hope it does, I will respectfully not buy it. Yup.
What about Sonic Mania Plus?
What about Sonic Mania Plus? Anyway, enjoy your games and accept it when other people don't. Unless, of course, we're talking about 2007 masterpiece Sonic and the Secret Rings, in which case you're wrong about it, and I'm about to explain why.
No such thing as a narrow through dreams. Hopes may burn but forever last to give in. So many things need a push or pull to begin. Aren't free to move unless another hand gets in. Be it all the same, it's never the same. Just like that, it's nothing, it all just means nothing, it all just means if all as is, then it's never as is.